Hi everybody, welcome to the Icing Artist. So this week we're going to be making a 3-tier wedding cake. I'm going to teach you guys how to tier a cake and also how to do kind of a naked themed wedding cake. So I'm going to be using an 8-inch cake, a 6-inch cake, and a 4-inch cake. I'm starting off with a 10-inch board. I'm going to put my first layer of my 8-inch cake onto my board. Just make sure it's nice and centered, and then I'm going to fill it using my buttercream icing. You can get all of my recipes at theicingartist.com. So once I've filled my cake, I'm just going to make sure it's nice and smooth, and then I can put my second layer on top of that. Again, just make sure it's nice and centered. And I'm going to do the same thing with my 6-inch cake and my 4-inch cake. And I'm just putting some buttercream on my cake board to make sure that my cake sticks to my cake board and it doesn't slide around on me. You're going to want to use the same size cake board as your tiers. So since my second tier is going to be a 6-inch cake, I'm going to use a 6-inch cake board. So I'm also going to fill that, put on my second layer, and then also get my 4-inch cake ready. And again, I'm just using a 4-inch cake board. So now that my cakes are ready to go, I'm just going to use buttercream and just make a mark on my 8-inch cake where my 6-inch cake is going to kind of sit on top of that. And that's where I'm going to put my supports. So I'm just going to use dowels. And those are going to be to support the weight of each cake, kind of tearing up to it. So I'm going to insert the dowel and mark the height. And then I'm going to cut it off at that line. So I'm just using a small saw, and I'm going to cut my dowels. And I'm going to use the first dowel that I used to measure the height and cut all the other dowels the same height. I'm just going to wipe them off using a damp cloth. Just make sure they're nice and clean. And if you're unsure how many dowels to use, I kind of use the size of cake as a rule. So since I'm tiering a 6-inch cake, I'm going to use 6 dowels. And then I'll be tiering a 4-inch cake, so I'm going to use 4 dowels. And I just kind of use that as my guide, and that's usually enough supports. And when you're inserting the dowels, you just want to make sure that they're going to be hidden by the cake that you're placing on top. So you can always use the cake board or the cake pan just to double check to make sure that those dowels are going to be covered. And now I'm going to start icing my cake, except this cake is going to be a naked wedding cake, so it's not going to be fully iced. I'm only going to ice part of it. But if you were doing a traditional buttercream cake, you could ice the entire cake at this point, or you could cover each tier in fondant and then assemble the cake. So I'm just going to do a thin layer of buttercream. I'm going to do that on all the tops of my cakes. And that'll also help them stick together a little bit. Act as my glue. So now I'm going to start assembling my cake, making sure each tier is centered as I place it on. As you can see, the dowels are completely covered and you can't see them. And that's really what's supporting all the weight of the cake. It helps with the cake boards and with the dowels. You really need both as your structure to hold on all the weight of all 3 tiers of your cake. Except we also need dowels going all the way from the top of the cake right down to the base, so that way none of our cakes fall off of there. So I'm just going to sharpen each of the dowels, and I've cut them to the height of my cake. And I'm just going to start hammering through, and that will actually penetrate into both of those cake plates in the middle. And it'll go right through there, holding all of my cakes together. I'm going to place 3 dowels into my cake, and that's so it doesn't twist around at all, so it just stays nice and secure in place all the time. And now that's done, I can start decorating it up a little bit. So I'm just going to do a bead of icing going around each of the cake boards and where the dowels were at the top. And then also some random different spots around my cake. And again, this is a naked wedding cake. A naked wedding cake is kind of a cake bare boned without any of the decorations, fondant, flowers, or anything like that kind of on top of it. So it's just going to be very rustic and bare. It's kind of like a new trend. So I'm just going to do a very light, thin crumb coat all over my cake. Now that's done, I'm just going to use a piece of paper towel, and this is a technique to help really smooth out my cake so I don't have any bumps or lumps or any unsmooth portions of the cake kind of standing up. It's just going to leave all of my icing nice and silky smooth. And I've already made my beautiful flower cake topper. I've made a tutorial for that of how to make your own DIY cake topper for under $10. So I will leave a link for this at the end of the video. So I'll just stick that right on top of my cake. I'm just going to push it in until I'm happy with the height of it. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do to the cake. I'm just going to leave it really simple and rustic and beautiful. So that's how you guys can make a 3-tier cake. I hope you guys really liked my method of how to do it. I hope you guys learned a lot during the video. And then that's also how you guys can do a naked wedding cake, which is a really simple, really fast way to do a beautiful, elegant, kind of rustic cake. And I'll also leave a link after this of how you can make that really pretty little flower cake topper that I put on top for under $10. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I do put out new videos every week, so if you guys head on over to my channel, I've got lots of videos there, and I'd love for you guys to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and take care. Click here if you'd like to see how to make your own cake topper for under $10. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click here to see how I made last week's finger painting Mother's Day cookies.